Hi, everybody. It's Monday morning. We're here for Behind the Scenes, and we're so excited to have one of our most loyal guests, Poppy. She is in Rhode Island, and she's been working with kids for many, many years in a bunch of different schools. So it'll be fun to have her perspective on the question because it's a very different lens to have to hear parents and what they do than to be the parent doing it. Our topic for today is when we call the other parents or tell the other parents, um, and how did it go? So I can talk about it from both perspectives of having told a parent and having been told. And when I was told, I knew a whole other story from my kid. So I was really irritated by the phone call because the phone call was, your kid is bullying my kid. And my kid was coming home every day telling me about how this other kid was bullying him. And so I just felt like, where do we go with this conversation? And the mom said to me, I expect you to talk to your son and get back to me with what the consequences are. And I was like, oh, well, that's not going to happen. But thank you so much for letting me know. And then I did tell a friend one time about drinking going on in her house, and it did almost ruin the friendship. So it's not, I don't know so many people who say it goes well, but I can say in my example, like if it were life and death, I think I'd give up the friendship over that, but I didn't need to say anything. It was illegal. That was the thing. And that was probably not necessary. And also probably they knew, like people know. So anyway, I would not do it again if I had the opportunity. And I'm going to pass it to Mindy because I'm sure she has a very different perspective and she's very wise.
Well, I'm not so sure about that, but thank you, Sue. I also have been on both ends, and I have to say, I think like everyone, it's really hard to hear something sort of negative about your child, or your child did this, or this wasn't okay. And it was, I can still thinking about it, feel that kind of gut punch. And that I was always the one that I think automatically I assumed, yep, okay, yep, it's my kid, yep. And then when I talk to my child, I always got a different story. So I think looking back, I feel a little guilty that I didn't maybe stand up for my kid more. Right away, I just assumed, oh my God, it was my kid. And on the other side, I had a way back an agreement with a couple of other parents. Our kids were in middle school, if you ever hear my child doing something, I want you to tell me. If you ever hear, back and forth, it's an agreement, handshake. And I did actually hear, again, it was illegal, middle school, told the mom, and it didn't do any good. The child's path did not change throughout high school and on. So I don't know, looking back, was it worth it? She took it okay, but I don't think it had an impact anyway on the child. So it's tough. It's tough. And if that I do have construction going on in my home. So if you can use that, I will mute myself and I will pass it down to Jody.
Jody, before you jump in, I'm just going to respond to two comments here. So Sherry says that when she makes calls, I believe, or has gotten them, it's about mental health and safety intervention. So yeah, that seems like a worthy call. I'm curious if it went well for you or not. And then Stephanie, I am speaking to somebody, a professional tomorrow, actually a parenting coach. If you get on tomorrow at 10:30, or if you look at it later in the day, I'm going to ask your question and see if we can get some advice for you. So that goes back to Jody.
So the beginning of this conversation has made me think of one of my favorite lines from the trashy TV show that I've been streaming, Cobra Kai. And at the end, there's one character, it's a nostalgic 80s thing for those of you who watched Karate Kid. But anyway, these three people get together who have had a long history. And one of them looks at the other two and, that's the thing about the truth. There's your truth, and then there's the truth. And I think that's one of the things that's always hard, you know, when you're talking about this, whether you're going to reach out or go beyond, because getting the truth is always, you know, it's complicated and everyone seems to have their own version of it. Having taught for 25 years, I still would, I guess, err on the side of making the phone call, because I think the what if I didn't call and something happened thing is a tough one. We did have one, I don't want to say funny, but one situation in our house where one of my kids in middle school, he and a few friends, they created their own Twitter account, and they kind of used it to really tweet some unkind things about people that they thought were hilarious. And you know, because kids are dumb, sorry, sometimes they don't make the best choices, maybe they're not dumb, but they actually tweeted something about another one of my kids who got really upset. And so then kind of the whole thing came out, which is how I found out about their account. And I did, you know, have a few conversations with the other parents, and it was very fascinating, because it's just like, you know, this is really, I don't want them to do harm. What if they do something and they upset somebody else and what they're doing? And, you know, in the whole bullying thing. And I just remember one parent saying, well, you know, they're just trying to be funny. I'm like, yeah, but, you know, fun. So it was just a really hard conversation, but it was just like, you know, but it's really not funny. And we really, you know, so anyway, at the end of the story, the account was shut down, and that was that. And we've had a lot of conversations about it afterwards, but that is one situation where, you know, I did reach out to other parents. So, and I've also had the pacts with my friends, but it just seems like you make them and then it's really kind of hard. And everybody has different levels of tolerance about what they think is okay for their kids to do versus what you think is okay for their kids or your kids to do. So it gets a little bit complicated. Anyway, all right, that's it. I'm going to pass it down to Sharon. It's like the Brady Bunch this morning. We're just going to go in a circle.
Good morning. When I first think of these calls, it reminds me of when the kids are little and you had some other child over for a play date, and you decide whether or not to tell that they like shoved your kid down. Or even back when I was a babysitter, I used to hate to report to the parents that the kid did something bad. I just felt like such a tattletale. So I think it's tough in a lot of situations. Lately, I've been lucky because of the pandemic and because my kids are younger. They haven't had as many opportunities to be out of my sight doing crazy things. But I will say this in terms of the relationship with my kids about these calls. If I even so much as mention, well, I'm going to talk to so-and-so's mom and see what their role is on this, because I don't think that, you know, I think you're telling me that their rule allows this and you're trying to coordinate with your friend. And I don't think that's right. But if I so much as mention that I might call this other parent, no, mom, that's so embarrassing. You can't do that. You know, you can't get involved. And obviously sometimes I have to, because, you know, I'm going to be calling certain families to see whether the parents are home, if my kid's going over there and stuff. But yeah, the kids don't approve. It seems like it can go unpleasantly on so many different levels, not just talking to the other kid, but your relationship with your own kid too. So I'm going to pass it on. I guess we're going round to Jen.
Thanks, Sharon. Yeah, this is, I have to say, there's really no good outcome that generally comes from calling the other parent. Nobody wants to hear that their kid did something wrong. Sometimes they're in denial. Sometimes they just feel bad. But there's even, what is the desired outcome? Like, you have to think of it this way. If it's your kid is being excluded and you're calling to say, hey, your kid is excluding my kid, what do you think is going to happen from that? Is it going to make it better if the other parent says, hey, you have to let so-and-so sit at your lunch table? That's not going to be a good outcome. So as much as it hurts and you want to try to fix it, most of the time, the answer to that garden variety of middle school meanness, we'll call it, there's no good outcome for you calling the other parent. And the solution is more to help your kid redirect and say, you know what, the people you're friends with now are not the people you're likely to be friends with forever. This is a great time to make new friends, and I'll support you, and just to listen and say, We've all been there, and it really hurts. So that's not great advice, but that's kind of all you can really do. And when it comes to the mental health thing, I feel a little bit differently. And I found one tactic that I thought was somewhat helpful is if you're aware that there's somebody, one of your kids' peers is posting something online that is concerning, what I've done is I've reached out to a parent who I think may be closer to that other parent to say, I wonder if Sally knows that Susie is posting a few things that sound alarming. Do you think it's something you would feel comfortable having that conversation with her? Because I don't really know her that well. And that has been one way you can go about it, because you're right. You don't really want to take that opportunity to let that opportunity slip by if it's truly a call for help. So those are the two. I kind of distinguish between garden variety meanness and something that's alarming. They do require different responses in my book. Eka, how about you? I'm going to skip up to you.
Good morning, everyone. I have a couple examples. One of them was when I was on the receiving end of the call. And as much as my first reaction was I was pretty defensive about it, I realized that the mothers who had called me, it was like the same weekend. We were having some issues with my daughter, and I got 2 different phone calls from 2 different mothers about the same thing. And I realized that it was as hard for them to make that call as it was for me to take it. And they obviously did it because they were concerned with my daughter. And I had to sit down, and there were 2 different spectrums of friends. It wasn't even the same friend group. And so I had to really think that this was an issue, and it made me sit down and realize I had to get my daughter some help. So as much as I did not appreciate those phone calls, and not like, I don't like you calling me, I was like, oh my God, what's happening? I knew that I needed to do something, and it was kind of like the kick that I needed to get to do something, and I did. The other one was actually more painful, where I saw a child, actually was like ridiculous, because I can't believe that this was happening. I was in the bowling alley, and I saw a friend's daughter walking through the bowling alley smoking a cigarette, which is, illegal anyway. And they were in high school, and they were wearing a letter jacket for their sport. And at that point in school, they said, if you broke any of the rules, you were completely kicked off whatever team you're playing. So, and I think I probably wouldn't have called if this girl hadn't been wearing her letter jacket. So I mustered in me to call the mom and say, hey, you know what? I saw your daughter in the bowling alley. She was holding a cigarette, blah, blah, blah. And her first reaction was like, well, she doesn't smoke. And then she said, well, she's probably holding it for a friend. And, I would have smelled it on her. And I was like, you know what? I'm just telling you what I saw. And I said, and the reason I'm telling you was because she was wearing her letter jacket. So I'm not the only one who saw her there that night. And I think she was not that happy with me, but I just kind of felt like if your kid had gotten kicked off the soccer team, that would have been a travesty for her. So anyway, so that was my thing. And after that, it was so badly met that I never did it again. So.
All right, I'm gonna go, before I go to Poppy, I'm gonna share some of the comments here, because we want to be grateful for all these comments. So Try Hard Mommy, this is such a good rule. I love this. Our rule is that I hold confidence unless something is illegal or someone is in danger. If there's danger, the first question I ask is, do their adults know? That's fantastic advice. Thanks. Angela says, I think that, wait, how did that come up, the same one? Nah, sorry guys, 1 second. Let's go back. And here's another part of that story. Our sons told me about a family friend's teenage social media account, which contained illegal and dangerous material. I had lunch with the mom and shared it. It was hard. Yeah, I can imagine. Those things are so challenging, and they're hard to anticipate in advance what you would do. And then I want to get a few more up, and we'll do the other ones after. Aren't we better off giving our kids the tools to deal with it? So Angela, 100%, and until it's maybe falls into Try Hard Mommy's suggestion, which is like, we need to give them the tools to deal with it, but it might also require an adult to intervene. Poppy is our guest today. Do you have anything you would like to add? Hold on, I'm going to unmute you. There you go. Oh, no, I think we both did it. Let me unmute you. Oh, nope, she did it. Okay, there you go. Hi,
Well,
Poppy.
hi. I certainly agree with, I support everything you all say. Whenever we're working with parents, we have to be extremely careful because you don't want to be judgmental. They feel it's a reflection on themselves. So in schools, we usually start with the kids. We start to work with the kids, and we call it like restorative justice, to try to get those involved together and talk to them about what is going on. Of course, if there's anything dangerous, we would directly, inform parents, and get them involved. But like you said about giving the kids the tools, it's important for the kids to, realize what is going on, what exists, and what is wrong, what is right, and how do you make amends for it. So we do a lot of work with the students themselves within the school. That's
fantastic advice, Poppy. Thank you. You must be a great counselor. Thanks so much. Okay, so I'm going to share.
Thank you.
I'm going to share one more comment. So Sherry says that the safety of the teen is most important. And then Christina, I think this is really helpful also. When it's time to hear my teen side, I tend to say, you will be in far less trouble if you tell me the truth so we can learn together how to prepare you for these situations. I like that. I think that's great. And now we're going to go to Jessica, who is going to play the part of Emily, who couldn't be here today.
Actually, one moment. There we go. Now I'm Emily. So Emily couldn't make it today. So she sent her own thoughts, which were, I've been on both ends of the call before, and what I've learned, I hope, is that the natural first reaction to getting called is to feel defensive, and that it is extremely frustrating when a parent calls and says unequivocally, this is what happened. I try to approach the conversation in the following way. I am sure that there are many sides of this, and I know my kid is selective in telling me things, but here's what I saw or heard, and I'd love to hear if you've seen or heard anything similar. So that is my Emily impression for the day. I don't know if it was very effective, but...
Well, you did a great job being Emily, and it was great advice from Emily. Mindy, did you have something you wanted to say?
I did too, thank you. I was just wondering if Try Hard Mommy is still with us. I wonder if the lunch was successful, meaning did the material come down? Did anything happen? I understand it's hard, it was, but it would just be interesting if it turned out positive. So I don't know if she's still with us, if she could comment.
Yeah, that would be great if you're here and you want to comment on that, Try Hard Mommy.
Yes.
Yes, I think the answer is yes, it was effective, is I think what that is the response to. Good for you. I mean, I think if you can pull this off, you probably are a great communicator, because I think Eka's story is a reflection on Eka, who could hear the information and respond to it. So I think, on the flip side of that, if you're very good at communicating, Try Hard Mommy says the lunch was painful. The mom broke down. Yeah. So you're a good friend. Okay. Someone else wanted to say something. Jody?
I was going to say too, I think also entering into these conversations, and I think Poppy said it too, that you don't want to be judgmental. The goal is try to help here and to or to avert a bigger problem or something. And I think that, with Eka calling the mom saying, there could be bigger trouble. It's just, or, also to have a solution. Well, why don't we do, we could do this, or, but I think that's one of the really hard things, that you're not just trying to say, oh, your kid's, just to, approach it in a way that, I'm just worried, or I just would hate to see, something, whatever. I know also, when I've had conversations with parents through school, that, it's really also about what you can do next to make sure, to fix a problem, or to make sure that people can recover for something. And I think that's also a really kind of helpful strategy too. So.
Okay, Ekka's raising her hand. I get to be the teacher today.
Well, no, yeah. I think what Jody was saying is how you approach it. You know, it's a hard thing to do. So if I didn't want to approach it like, hey, guess what? I was like, hey, listen, this is really, really hard for me. And I really thought about doing this. I don't want to do this, but I think you should know, just because I would hate for it to ruin what your daughter's been working so hard with in her sports during the season. And that's how I kind of prefaced it, because I didn't want to be like, oh yeah, so I'm at the bowling alley. You know, I mean, I just didn't want to have that cavalier attitude. So I thought I had approached it the right way. And I think then when I was approached about my daughter, I think it was the same thing. I think both of the friends were like, hey, I've been thinking about this. This is a really hard phone conversation for me to make. But I have to tell you this because I'm concerned about your daughter. So I think a lot of it has to do with maybe how you approach it. That's how I felt. But, you know, once again, I haven't done it since. But that's the only thing I could think of, is maybe that's the way to couch the whole thing, is not, I'm calling you because I saw this, but I'm calling because I'm concerned after I saw this or heard this. So
what I love about that point is that we should probably sleep on it and think about our motive before we ever call another parent, because sometimes it can be out of anger and protection for our kid, and sometimes it's for the benefit of someone else, and then you'll couch it very differently.
Well, the thing with me is I rehearsed it. I rehearsed it over and over and over again with like my husband, who's like, just make the damn phone call. You know what I mean? Because I kept going like, how about if I say, and he was just like, you know what, just do it before you just do it. So, I mean, it wasn't an easy thing to do, but that's my personality. So anyway, okay, I'm going to mute myself because I could just blah, blah, blah forever.
Well, thank you everybody for participating with us today. It makes it so much more fun for us. And Poppy, thank you so much for being our guest. And do we have a topic for next week? Anybody have any suggestions? And you can put in the comments also if you have any thoughts about what we should talk about next week. Any ideas, guys? Valentine's Day?
Oh, it's Valentine's Day. I was going to say, how about we discuss like what happens when you become best friends with your kids' best friends and then they're no longer best friends?
Oh, yeah. With the parents, you mean?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's a good one. I had that. Yeah.
You know,
okay,
like,
guys, you heard it here. This is what we're talking about next week. When the relationships overlap, so when they break up, they're painful on so many levels. And we'll talk about that next week. Have a great week.